Throughout human history, a single question has haunted philosophers, mystics, and truth seekers. What happens when we die? From the dawn of civilization to modern studies of near-death experiences, there exists a recurring pattern woven into ancestral texts that could reveal what awaits us beyond the veil of existence. What if ancient books exist, forgotten manuscripts preserved through centuries, that explain in detail what occurs during the transit between life and death? Sacred texts describing the soul's states, the paths it traverses, and secrets only initiated seekers have deciphered. We will venture into the enigma of these books, exploring their contents, origins, and impact across spiritual traditions. We will discover what sages teach about death itself, how consciousness separates from the body, and what revelations have been transmitted about the soul's ultimate destiny. What you are about to hear is not mere speculation, but esoteric knowledge, carefully preserved within select circles of sacred wisdom. Knowledge guarded by initiates, transmitted through symbols, waiting for those ready to receive it. The ancient Egyptians left the Book of the Dead, a profound manuscript describing the soul's journey through the duat, the underworld, with extraordinary precision. In Tibet, the lamas compiled the Bardo Thodol, known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, detailing the distinct states of consciousness the soul experiences after the physical form is abandoned. These texts are not merely religious artifacts or philosophy. They are maps, actual guides to a territory every human will eventually traverse. They describe not darkness and finality, but a landscape of light, choice, and transformation. A journey continuing what we truly are, beyond the limitations of flesh and time. Hermetic traditions, Gnostic teachings, Hindu philosophy, Jewish mysticism, and Christian esotericism all point toward the same truth. Death is not an ending, but a transition, a passage, a threshold. Those who have studied these mysteries across cultures have discovered patterns and revelations, suggesting this journey is far more structured, far more merciful, and far more significant than the modern world dares acknowledge. Are you ready to discover what really occurs when we abandon this world? The moment of death arrives, that singular instant when the soul begins to separate from the physical form. Modern near-death experiences converge with ancient texts in describing what occurs. A profound shift in consciousness, a liberation from the constraints of matter. The ancient Egyptians described this moment as the opening of the Ka, the vital energy that withdraws from the body and begins its traversal through the duat. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, consciousness experiences a flash of pure light, the essence of ultimate reality itself. Yet many souls fail to recognize this radiance and become trapped in the confusion of their own ego. Contemporary near-death accounts document a consistent phenomenon, a sensation of floating, of observing one's own physical form from above, accompanied by profound peace or, in some cases, confusion and fear. Some traditions affirm that in this moment occurs a separation of subtle bodies, and depending on the soul's vibration, it may ascend toward higher planes or remain anchored in the density of the material realm. One of the most recurring elements in descriptions of post-mortem transit is the experience of the tunnel of light, a symbol appearing across multiple traditions, from Christian mysticism to Hinduism. It is said to represent the opening of an energetic channel, connecting the physical plane to elevated dimensions. The Tibetan Book of the Dead explains that at this point, the the soul encounters different manifestations of its own mind. Illuminated souls can traverse the tunnel and unite with universal consciousness, but those still attached to their earthly identity may reject the light and be drawn into intermediate states of confusion and shadow. Ancient cultures described a process in which the soul confronts its own actions. In Egypt, the judgment of Osiris consisted of weighing the deceased's heart against the feather of Ma'at, goddess of truth and balance. If the heart was light, the soul could access Aru, the paradise of the just. If heavy, it was devoured by Ammit, the soul eater. Remarkably, people who have experienced near-death phenomena report something similar, a panoramic life review where they experience their actions not only from their perspective, but feeling the impact they had on others. This suggests death is not an escape, but a moment of profound revelation. If the judgment of the soul is a mirror reflecting all our actions, emotions, and thoughts, then what comes after? Ancient traditions speak of different destinies for the soul, determined by its level of evolution and connection with universal truth. The soul enters a state of profound reckoning. In some traditions, this is described as standing before divine judges. In others, as a natural consequence of consciousness encountering its own reflection. The mechanism matters less than the reality. The soul cannot hide from itself. Every cruelty becomes visceral. Every kindness radiates light. There is no deception possible in this realm. The Tibetan teachings explain that during this phase, the soul experiences visions that are manifestations of its own mind. If it surrenders to fear, it can be drawn toward darker planes. If it recognizes the light as its true essence, it liberates itself from the cycle of suffering. The soul's own beliefs, cultivated during life, become the architecture of its experience. Ancient Hindu philosophy speaks of this through the law of karma and dharma. The soul's journey is determined not by external judgment, but by the natural consequence of its own vibration. Those who cultivated lives in harmony with the universe advance toward higher states. Those trapped in lower frequencies naturally descend to matching planes. It is a law as precise as gravity, yet operating in the realm of consciousness. In Gnostic texts, this moment is described as the soul's encounter with the archons, entities representing the lower forces of creation. Some souls recognize these as illusions of their own mind and pass through unharmed. Others, identified with material existence and fear, become entangled in these manifestations, experiencing them as real barriers. What becomes clear across all traditions is this: the soul does not face external punishment or reward. Rather, it experiences the natural consequence of its own state of consciousness. Compassion becomes experienced as light. Cruelty becomes experienced as density and shadow. There is no escaping one's own truth. This confrontation, terrifying as it may sound, is also liberating. For in this moment, the soul has the opportunity to truly see itself, not through the filters of ego, rationalization, or denial, but with absolute clarity. And in that clarity lies the possibility of transformation, of choosing a higher path, of evolution itself. In many spiritual doctrines, existence is not divided simply into heaven or hell. Instead, multiple planes of reality are described, each with its own vibration and purpose. The soul's destination depends not on arbitrary judgment, but on its own frequency, the cumulative effect of how it lived, thought, and loved. The lower astral plane is where many souls initially find themselves. It is not a place of torture, but a realm of confusion and shadow, where souls experience the echoes of their attachments, fears, and unresolved traumas. Souls here may perceive themselves as still bound to earthly existence, unable to release the possessions, relationships, or identities they clung to in life. Some traditions call this the Bardo Inferior, or Sheol, an intermediate state where the soul works through its densest patterns before ascending. Above this exists what Hermetic and esoteric traditions call the astral planes proper, realms of increasing luminosity and subtlety. Here, the soul begins to recognize the illusory nature of its previous attachments. It encounters guides, teachers, and other evolved souls. It experiences beauty and peace, previously unimaginable, yet still perceives these through the lens of its own consciousness. Higher still are the celestial planes, the realms of pure light and advanced consciousness. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, this is the Aaru, the field of reeds, where the just soul exists in eternal harmony. In Hindu philosophy, this corresponds to the higher locus, planes of existence where souls continue their evolution in states of increasing refinement and bliss. The highest plane, described across traditions by different names, Nirvana, the Godhead, the Absolute, represents complete liberation and dissolution of individual consciousness into universal consciousness itself. Not as an obliteration, but as a return home, a remembrance of one's true nature as inseparable from all existence. What determines which plane a soul inhabits? The answer is simple and profound: its own consciousness. The law of vibration ensures that souls naturally gravitate toward planes matching their frequency. Those still dense with ego and desire remain in denser planes. Those who cultivated wisdom, love, and spiritual awareness naturally ascend to corresponding higher realms. This is not punishment or reward. It is resonance. Like attracts like. Consciousness creates its environment, both in life and after death. Here we arrive at one of existence's greatest enigmas. Does the soul follow an infinite cycle of rebirths, or can it achieve a state of final illumination and liberation? Eastern teachings affirm that reincarnation is an opportunity, a chance to correct errors, to learn profound lessons, and to evolve toward higher consciousness. The Bhagavad Gita teaches that the soul, like a person changing garments, changes bodies in each life. Each incarnation is not punishment, but a sacred opportunity, a classroom designed by the soul itself for its own growth. Yet not all traditions embrace reincarnation in this way. Christian esotericism speaks of the possibility that the most evolved souls transcend the cycle entirely, achieving union with the divine in a single lifetime or immediately upon death. The Sufi tradition describes this as dissolution in the beloved, a state where the soul returns to its source and merges with universal consciousness, losing all separation and duality. Gnostic texts describe those who awaken to true knowledge as capable of escaping the archontic system, the control mechanisms of the material world, and returning directly to their spiritual home. For these souls, reincarnation is not necessary. They have learned what they came to learn and graduated from the cycle of return. Here emerges a crucial understanding. Reincarnation is not inevitable for all souls. It is an option, a path, a choice for those still bound by karmic debts or the desire for continued learning. But for those who achieve true awakening, who recognize the illusions of ego and material existence, who cultivate unconditional love and wisdom, transcendence and liberation become possible. Some esoteric traditions suggest that in the moment before transition, or during the intermediate states after death, each soul faces a choice: to ascend and unite with universal consciousness, to reincarnate and continue learning through embodiment, to remain in the astral planes, not yet ready for either option. Free will, it seems, extends even beyond death itself. The form our afterlife takes depends partly on our evolution, but also on what we choose. Some souls eagerly seek new incarnations to continue their service and growth. Others have completed their earthly lessons and are ready for transcendence. Still others hesitate, uncertain, remaining in intermediate states. The journey does not end at death. In many ways, it only truly begins. If death is not an ending, but a transformation, then the way we live determines the quality of that journey. It is not merely about speculating on what awaits beyond, but about cultivating our consciousness now, so that when the moment arrives, we are prepared to cross with clarity, peace, and wisdom. The esoteric traditions converge on a profound truth. The weight of our emotions, attachments, and actions follows us beyond death. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, confusion after departure arises from the mental state with which we departed. To avoid being dragged into fear or attachment, we must purify our energy while still embodied. This is not theory, it is practical preparation. The greatest error of humanity is identifying ourselves solely with body and ego. Yet we can expand beyond this limitation. Through meditation, we cultivate presence and clarity of mind, training ourselves to recognize reality without fear. Through forgiveness of others and ourselves, we release the dense emotions that would trap us in lower planes. Through contemplating impermanence, we practice the detachment necessary to release what we believe we possess. Hermetic philosophy teaches that our daily life is already part of the soul's journey. Death is not an abrupt separation from existence, but the natural continuation of our state of being. Therefore, to ensure a harmonious transition, we must begin living with greater consciousness and spiritual alignment now. Every action carries weight. Every thought leaves an imprint on our energetic signature. Every choice either elevates our frequency or lowers it. The ancient teaching is clear. Who we are at the moment of death reflects who we have become through how we have lived. The sages across cultures teach that those who die in peace have lived in peace. Those who transcend fear of death transcend fear of living. And the key to a harmonious transition lies not in the final breath, but in how consciously we breathe each moment of our existence. The texts tell us that death is not something to fear, but something to prepare for, not with dread, but with wisdom. And that preparation is the art of living fully, authentically, and awakened to the sacred dimension woven through every instant of existence itself.